Yashoda here with West Coast Yoga. Thank you for joining us for morning class. Today we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, chapter number 1, text number 8, which reads as follows. Vetattvang somyatat sarvam tattvatas tadanugrahat bhuya snigdasya shishyasya guravo guyam apyuta. Translation. And because you are submissive, your spiritual masters have endowed you with all the favors bestowed upon a gentle disciple. Therefore, you can tell us all that you have scientifically learned from them. We're going to read a few paragraphs of Srila Prabhupada's purport for good measure. Srila Prabhupada's purport. The secret of success in spiritual life is in satisfying the spiritual master and thereby getting his sincere blessings. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur has sung in his famous 8 stanzas on the spiritual master as follows. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of my spiritual master. Only by his satisfaction can one please the personality of Godhead, and when he is dissatisfied, there is only havoc on the path of self-realization. End quote. It is essential, therefore, that a disciple be very much obedient and submissive to the bona fide spiritual master. Srila Sutta Goswami fulfilled all these qualifications as a disciple, and therefore he was endowed with all favors by his learned and self-realized spiritual masters, such as Srila Vyasadeva and others. The sages of Naimisharanya were confident that Srila Sutta Goswami was bona fide. Therefore, they were anxious to hear from him. Om Jnana Timirandasya, Jnananjana Shalakaya, Chakshura Unmilitam Jena, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha, Mukam Koroti Vachalam Pangun Langayati Girim, Yat Kripa Tamaham Bande, Shri Guruntina Tarinam. We find in the forest of Vrindavan, the feminine energy is very prominent. And for this reason, the spiritual master of the entire Vrindavan community is a feminine, Purnamasi. The gopis of Vrindavan did not have the opportunity to undergo a formal education, but they did hear from the senior personalities like Purnamasi, Gargacharya, among others. And in this way, they became scholars on the pastimes of Lord Krishna. To such an extent, they knew about Krishna's incarnations in previous lives, and sometimes they would chide him on this subject. So I'll speak briefly about it. When there was a special visitor to Vrindavan, after Krishna departed from Vraj, he sent a messenger to condole all the Vrajvasis who were practically dying in separation. And who did Krishna select as his messenger? His very dear devotee Uddhava, who happened to bear a very close resemblance to the Lord. It wasn't enough that Uddhava looked like Krishna. He even wore the same clothing that Krishna had worn, his prasad, his remnants. On this occasion, when Uddhava arrived in Vrindavan bearing Krishna's message, at that time it was the afternoon, and the chariot was kicking up dust into the air, creating a cloud, so that you could hear the rumbling of a chariot coming from a distance. But due to the dust in the air, you couldn't quite make out who the personalities were distinctly. As the gopis heard the chariot rumbling, they were reminded of the messenger of death, who for them was Akrura. Akrura came to Vrindavan on a chariot and took away Krishna, and this was the death blow to the gopis. So their rationale was, oh, we hear the rumbling of the chariot. This must be Akrura. He practically killed us by taking away Krishna, but we are still living. Now he's going to actually deal the death blow and will physically die, and this will be his full contribution to our lives. They were kind of thinking in a negative connotation. The chariot finally arrived, the dust settled, and a very interesting personality emerged. That was Uddhava. He was practically Krishna's twin. He had a perfection called Sarupya. The Svarupya perfection enables the devotee to have a physical features very closely resembling the Lord. In the spiritual world, particularly in Vaikuntha, you can very hardly tell the distinction between the Lord and his servants. Krishna has a few distinguishing characteristics. He has the mark of Srivatsa on his chest, like a curly white hair. He also has this Kaustubha gem that's shaped like a calf. A few characteristics, his footprints have distinct characteristics. That aside, the devotees have this perfection that they very closely resemble the Lord. And this was especially true of Uddhava, who not only resembled Lord Krishna, was the same age. He was wearing Krishna's dhoti, he was wearing Krishna's garland, etc. The gopis could immediately understand, oh, this personality must be very dear to Krishna. Let's go see and receive him properly. And Uddhava was received by all the residents of Vrindavan with great affection. Mother Yashoda and Nanda Maharaj practically worshipped him. And as they recounted again and again the Lord's pastimes, they were weeping. And Yashoda practically lost consciousness. And Uddhava, this was his first trip to Vraj. And he was absorbing the sweet mood of all the residents. And his hair was standing on end. It was almost overwhelming for him. Finally, after properly being received by Nanda and Yashoda, he made his way to where the gopis were. And you had this one big group of gopis, but on the side, there was the supermost gopi, Radharani. And she was also receiving Krishna's messenger. That was not Uddhava, that was a bumblebee. Radharani was undergoing this ecstasy called Mahabhav, where perception is somewhat, I guess, distorted. She was having a very special ecstasy. Uddhava delivered to the gopis this letter that was handwritten by Krishna, and they were relishing the contents. Krishna was speaking high philosophy, Sankhya. He described that through their deep love, the gopis were actually associating with Krishna directly. That feeling of separation, tinged with love, that very strong separation, meant that they were associating with Krishna directly, and he was very pleased with their service. Radharani, however, was kind of crooked. She was displaying this crooked love, and so she was actually insulting the bumblebee. She said, "My dear bumblebee, I see that on your antenna and on your mustache, there's some red fiber. This red fiber is coming from Krishna, actually. When Krishna embraces the chests of the women of Mathura, these high society girls, Krishna has abandoned the village girls, and now he's embracing the society girls. And when he embraces them, the kumkum from their breasts rubs upon Krishna. And now this kumkum has passed onto the bumblebee, who is Krishna's messenger." And she said, "My dear bumblebee, you are the wicked servant of a wicked master. You've come here to glorify Krishna, but I know his tricks. I have been trained by Purnamasi. I know that in his former lives, Krishna was also very troublesome." And she began recounting different pastimes. She said, "Formerly, the Lord incarnated with Bali. Bali Maharaj was the grandson of Prahlad, born in the demon dynasty. When Bali took over the heavenly planets, there was an opportune moment. With the blessings of his guru, Shukracharya, he took over the heavenly planets, and Lord Krishna had to incarnate to again return order to the universe. On this occasion, he incarnated as Vamanadev, the dwarf, whose particular opulence, every incarnation has these distinct opulences. His opulence was his beauty. He could attract everyone with his beauty. When the dwarf Brahmin entered the assembly of Bali Maharaj, everyone was infatuated, and he simply asked for a small donation, 3 steps of land by his own measure. Of course, he tricked Bali, because with his first step, he covered practically the whole planet. With his second step, he pierced the universe, and the celebrated Ganges washed his lotus feet. And now he said, "I have a third step. You couldn't fulfill your promise. I have to bind you and punish you." So he bound up Bali with these very powerful serpent ropes, and he threw him in a dark cave, like some kind of a torture chamber. And the gopis, Radharani, was remembering that Krishna, his devotee, had surrendered in love, and the Lord was still torturing him. And so she was kind of identifying with Bali Maharaj. And then she continued her story. She says, I remember another time I told about Bali. Now I'm going to tell about Vali. In the pastime of Lord Ramchandra, there was an opponent named Vali. He had a benediction that anyone who stood just before him on the battlefield, Vali would take half of the opponent's power and add it to his own. And if you do the mathematical calculation, that means he was by default more powerful than the opponent. Lord Ramachandra had incarnated to defeat this evil monkey, and he realized that he would not be able to stand before him fairly on the battlefield because of this mystic perfection. What did Lord Ramchandra do? He hid in the bushes like a coward, and he released his arrow and shot Vali unfairly. This is one of those rare examples where the personality of Godhead performs special pastimes. He can break the conventional rules of religion, and that is his own sweet pastime. So he defeated the evil personality Vali and helped restore order to the universe. So Radharani was complaining how Krishna is so crooked, he couldn't even fight fairly on the battlefield. He had to shoot arrows from the bushes to defeat his opponent. And she was also identifying in this way. After speaking these harsh words, the bumblebee left, and Radharani thought, oh no, I've offended the messenger. Maybe he will go notify Krishna. And then the bumblebee came back and the conversation developed further. But in these ways, the residents of Vrindavan were trained up from their very childhood in the pastimes of Lord Krishna. Even though the gopis didn't undergo a formal education, by the grace of Purnamasi, Gargacharya, their lives were deeply imbued with the pastimes of Lord Krishna. So we wish also that we can inherit these pastimes. That is the greatest wealth. This oral tradition is coming down like mangoes, passed from the top of a mango tree. If you shake the mango tree, then you will spoil the fruit. You have to pass it down very gently, one hand to another. So the oral tradition is coming down unbroken, and this way we can taste the sweet fruit. Thank you for joining us, and I'll see you next time. Hare Krishna.